Welcome to Capital Conversations. I'm Marty Owings. It's Tuesday, May 1st, 2012. Tonight on the program, we'll hear from two lawmakers to get their updates on the latest from the legislature as we enter the final days of this session. Later on, we'll get an assessment on the legislative proceedings thus far from political reporter Paul Demko from Politics in Minnesota. As always, we invite you to participate in our political online program by sending us a tweet at MNCapNews or leaving us a Facebook message on Minnesota Capital News. You can find us there on Facebook or just Google Minnesota Capital News and you'll find us there. We're pleased now to be joined by Republican Senator Roger Chamberlain from Lino Lakes. Joins us tonight.
How you doing, Marty?
Good to have you here. And Representative Terry Morrow from the House, who, what's your term up here?
This is my third term.
Third term, yeah. That's right. So you, well, I know the class you came in with.
Right.
Some of them are gone.
Right, that's right.
That's right.
That's going to happen again.
Right. Yeah, that turnover occurs from time to time up here. Well, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let's start with some late-breaking developments on the Viking Stadium issue. Okay. Representative Morrow, you've been kind of out front on that for your caucus. Right. I guess that's putting it mildly. It sounds like the governor and the DFL leaders are upset that the GOP and the Vikings have been working on an alternative roofless plan, I guess, but they've excluded some Democrats from the process. And what's the rub?
Well, I don't think it's so much that a Democrat was excluded; it was that the bill authors were excluded. But more importantly, there's no local partner anymore. The Vikings weren't brought into the discussion. The NFL wasn't brought into the discussion. Yeah. The governor wasn't brought into the discussion. There are holes in this plan, not only in the roof, but in the funding. So, to me, this is more of a cocktail napkin sketch than a plan.
Boy, it didn't take you guys in the DFL long to come up with that soundbite, right? There's more holes in this plan in the roof. I like it. But let's talk about that for a second, because Senator Chamberlain, the GOP, has been scrambling as everybody else is to come up with a plan last minute. They thought they had a plan. Governor's been out front that he wants to get a plan. What about the politics involved here? Is this just you sticking it to the governor, or what do you make of the DFL accusations there?
I'm glad you asked. I have also been out there for several months trying to work a different process, and I dare say I'm trying to represent the 70% who didn't want a publicly funded stadium. And we have been working to try to get the proper hearing, the proper voice in the whole process. And this idea popped up, and I think what we're doing now is there's a lot of, right now the initial take is that there's a lot of support for this in the caucus, and it's a concept, and we're going to work with it. And the Vikings have not shot it down. They're still open to it. They didn't run away screaming. And the NFL has said in the past they don't have a position on whether or not the facility has a roof. Without a roof, it's a lot cheaper, not only on the capital side, but on the operating side. The operating costs are reduced by half. Mm-hmm. And this has then become something very doable. The Vikings have not expressed deep concern about a roof. They have told us in the past that eventually they would want one, but it's not a deal breaker for them. So we get a deal done that satisfies the people and we can all live with. I think that's what we're working for, a global deal that involves the bonding process and the stadium and a good tax bill.
Well, Representative Morrow, doesn't the plan, it only funds about 25%. 30%. That's a dead on arrival, isn't it, with the Vikings?
I think Senator Chamberlain must have missed Lester Bagley's press conference at 4:30 this afternoon, when the Vikings said they don't support this proposal, and he still hasn't told us where the $150 million is going to come from that the city of Minneapolis had proposed, had put into the deal that's on the floor. The Representative Lanning bill, Senator Rosen, we said we have 34 votes, we're ready to vote for that bill. So I think there are some significant holes that we have to figure out here. A general concept is fine, but a general concept is not something that's ready for prime time, ready for a vote, and we have 5 days left. It's a little disappointing that they decided not to bring in all the players from the bipartisan working group to talk about it.
Senator Chamberlain, what about that? What about the excluding of the group?
Well, that's a beautiful question, Mr. Marty. Beautiful, because I have been saying and pounding the drum for months when people said we've been on a working group and we came up with this plan. Well, the 70% of the Minnesotans who keep saying they don't want to pay for this were not represented on that working group. That deal was done when it got to the legislature, and that is evident in the fact of the way it's been pressured and pushed through the process, especially in the Senate tax hearing. They had a deal, and no matter what you do to that deal, you're not supposed to take anything out or put anything in. And whenever you do that, they just undo the changes. So we are simply looking for something that is more agreeable to all parties. And Lester Bagley did make some comments, but he did not shut the door on this deal. And the deal from Senator Rosen, when I was from her conversations, they have expressed that was an initial idea months and months and months ago about using GO bonds. So again, we're trying to represent the best interests of the people, save them some money, and if Mr. Morrow and some of his private sector business friends have $150 million, they're welcome to step up to the plate. But right now, we have a plan and an idea that is much more fair to the taxpayer, spends much less money, and the Vikings, the NFL, have said that they're indifferent to a roof, and we can put up a facility that can be roof ready and dealt with in a short time. So I think we're going in the right direction. It's much better. People are much more enthusiastic about this idea.
Well, I left the Capitol last week and things were strange. I came back and it was the whole script had been flipped. The GOP is proposing tax increases and the DFL's in bed with business and corporate America. What the hell's going on up here? I'm a little confused.
I'm confused too. I hear that I'm learning that 70% of Minnesotans supposedly do not support a stadium, but that Senator Chamberlain agrees with the idea of using bonding as a means, which is taking general fund money, which is taxpayer money, to fund it. So I'm not sure how
is
one
that where
both
the tax
uses bonds
increase
that are paid for with general funds.
Sure.
And the sheet that I saw that was created by Representative Dean had a $150 million entry in it for the city of Minneapolis, and the city of Minneapolis has said, we're not a partner. I don't think that means private business has to fund it. We need a local partner.
I can really get to that point. A bill and a proposal I had months ago simply said, we're going to leave it up to the Vikings to negotiate with their local partners like so many other businesses do. Our idea, our plan, our concept was we're going to treat them as we do any other business. And that means we'll do infrastructure, TIFs, whatever, enterprise zones we do for other companies. And the things that we're proposing in this bill are the very same things we've done for Carlson companies or Medtronic or data centers last session. It's the very same thing we have done for a number of companies, from up to the street level, lining up the utilities and the pavement, and making sure those companies can function after that. So we're treating this the same way, and that's our only goal. And this plan, while it spends $250 million in bonding, the debt service on 200, the number is really 200, that came out, $200 million debt service, could come out to as little as $5 or $10 million, and their income tax, the tax revenue we get from the Vikings, is about twice that, 20 to 25 million. So this is a plan that actually pays off to the state, where we're actually getting some return on the investment, and we're not spending as much money as we need, as some people think we need to spend.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up on that. So, that's not normally the track we take with stadiums around here, sports facilities. We did a little something for Northwest Airlines, right, back in the day.
Right. Yes.
Remember we cut them a deal, and some guy named Al Checky ran off with some money, and he never looked back, right? So on stadiums, though, you guys usually pony up some portion of some kind of taxpayer, a sin tax or whatever it is. Are you proposing a reform of how that's done? Is that what you're saying?
I think the people have spoken loud and clearly over the last several decades just on the polls here.
Yeah.
By the way, a Survey USA poll in February 2010 cited that only 10% of the respondents said electronic poll tabs should be used.
10%?
Yeah, 10% from a Survey USA poll. So again,
well, what about Racino? I didn't mean to
Racino comes in like, I think second. But there's political problems with Racino. I would respectfully defer to Mr. Morrow on that. But yes, we're trying to change the conversation because I frankly respect the input of the citizens. And this deal is less expensive on the capital side, less expensive on the operating side. We're doing the same thing we would do for Medtronic or Northwest Airlines, and that we have done for others. Infrastructure at the $200 million level, and we can work out some of the details later, but it's a much better process, much fairer, and the state gets an ROI on this, and if all parties can be happy without a roof for a while, and we can build a roof ready, I don't see what the problem is.
Well, Senator, you must be looking at a different set of sheets than I am, because Representative Dean's sheet says $298 million is the state share, so it's not 200, it's 298.
That's what
paid for with general funds.
That was the Vikings' first offer months ago.
Well, that was the sheet that's on. That is Representative Dean's number on the Representative Dean sheet that he handed out. But it's going to be paid for with general funds, which is taxpayer money. But there's a place where we agree. Well, I agree with you that we should be talking about the income taxes. We should be talking about the revenues generated. The problem, though, is that in the last tax year we know of, the Vikings income tax generated $12,500,000. It will ramp up over the 30 years at a 5% increase to $50 million. But you still have to front load, but there's still the local partner problem. And that's why I think that, while it's an intriguing idea that should be discussed, it's only an idea, Marty, and that's the problem. Well, we're supposed to vote on the House floor at 7 o'clock on some bill. I don't know what the vote.
Well, that's what I was going to get to both of you guys. Why not just throw it to the up or down vote? Why not just do
this
that?
is why you don't throw it to the up and down vote. Again, this thing has been pushed through the process, unlike any other bill that's been out there. And in my short time here, that it just hasn't. So
well, hang on a second, Senator Chamberlain. Let me challenge you on that.
Sure.
I've been around here long enough to know that both parties push bills through, without a lot of debate when they want to get things done.
Yep.
How is this then different?
This is $1 billion that's going to be put in the ground that you cannot change overnight. You can't come here next year and the right statute say, oh, by the way, we made a mistake with the comma or the at or the conjunction or something else. This is also a piece of legislation that 70% of the people said they don't want to support. So we are trying to find a middle ground that does what we do for other businesses and in the same way, same fashion. But Representative Morrow and his colleagues seem to want to spend, and some of my colleagues, I will say, seem to say that it's okay to spend. It'll be well over $1 billion of taxpayer money after you throw in the St. Paul deal. So you relieve their debt for $43 million, and you pay off build them a Saints stadium downtown. So this is just turning into apparently good legislation up here means that you just spend the taxpayers' money without any regard to the consequences. So I think we're taking a responsible position. We're taking a new approach, new eyes, a new direction at this. And the $298 million that Mr. Representative Morrow mentioned are simply dollars that were on the original proposal. And we have discussed this with the House side, so we know what the number is. Thank you.
Well, I'm just intrigued.
No, you're done now.
Because the GOP, you all are in charge. You're in the majority both sides.
Yes,
so if you're upset with the process, I would certainly hope you're talking to your leadership because it's your process.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking about the bill, it's Republican authors on the lead on both bills. So it's not me and my colleagues. We're along for the ride a little bit.
My principles are solid. I was the same last fall, last year, last summer during the shutdown. My positions were the same on taxes and spending as they are now. But some people are fungible and they're willing to flip. But my positions are the same. Senator Rosen had this initial proposal months ago. At the beginning of discussions, the authors are not that overly reluctant to it. They're still their bill, still their work, and we can get a deal that's much better for Minnesota, much better for the Vikings, and still save us some money and get a return on our investment.
If they leave the state, it's not going to matter who. You guys are all out. According to some Minnesota polls that I've seen lately, they'll just throw the whole bunch out. The governor, everybody. I mean, there's going to be a backlash if the Vikings leave the state, even though that 70% of people say they don't want to fund a stadium. 85% say they don't want to lose the Vikings
I'll challenge that number too. The number I heard, I don't want to lose the Vikings, but I'm opposed to public funding. And there's a lot of people like me. But to say the Vikings are going to leave, yeah, they could leave. But for them to go to, the NFL gets $1 billion for an expansion team. So if the Vikings were to move to, say, LA, they move out of the 5th largest market, established market, when there's a lot of other teams out there, smaller markets, lower revenues, and they're going to move into a place and take away $1 billion from the NFL on an expansion. And it would be a long time before they got one back here. So yes, we take that seriously, but we're negotiating like we're supposed to. We're elected leaders of this state, and we're trying to take a position that's creative, innovative, new, not business as usual, and try to find a solution that's equitable and fair to everybody.
Sure. Yeah. That sounds prudent.
Well, there's a bill on the floor. There's a bill on the floor. The bill could be amended. There are certainly opportunities to do that. As I keep saying, I think we're in agreement in terms of wanting to keep the Vikings here. I've been very upfront in saying, because I think there would be public money put in, and I think Senator Chamberlain is saying if he would vote for a bill on bonding, he's saying he would put public money in. So I think we're agreeing there. My position's always been that the income tax that we receive from the NFL, and that's about 70% of the Vikings revenue comes from out of state. It will disappear if the Vikings leave, and over 30 years, that's about $600 million that the state will lose. That's the funding source that I've been, if I could just finish my thought, that's the funding source that I've been focused upon. But any way that we pay for bonds, it's going to be using public money. It's plain and simple.
Okay, three quick points. I would challenge Representative Morrow or anybody else in the listening audience to bring me a study that suggests that these publicly funded stadiums have an economic benefit to the state. They never do, they never have, it won't happen, it doesn't happen. Only when we have a position like we have now. General fund money, the electronic poll tabs, that's public money into the general fund. They have a transaction, the transaction's taxed, those monies go into the general fund is then appropriated, and that money is spent. So to say that this other plan is not general fund money is, as Senator Neaton said, is fairy and foo-foo dust. It's silly. It comes from the general fund, and yes, this will come from the general fund. So did the previous plan. The previous plan was spent over $600 million in public sector money. And the last thing about why don't we just take it to the floor for a conference committee? If it comes back from the conference committee, they'll take out everything we put on it, and it'll be the same old bill. That's what happens here. You load up the conference committee, and it comes back out the same way. So that's what we're trying to present, a bad bill to the public.
Let's be fair. I never said that the poll tab money wasn't general fund money. You never heard me say that.
All right.
I was agreeing with you on that point. I just was saying all publicly funded buildings, all publicly funded structures use taxpayer money that comes from the general fund. That was my only point. I was saying we agreed on that point.
I have one last thing I forgot to say. I'm sorry, but as Representative Morrow said, we get 600, I don't know how many hundreds of millions in dollars from this thing. It is not true. We don't get that much. If you present value the future payment streams of the income tax from the players, it comes back to a couple $100 million today's dollars. So if we put a little bit of money in up front here with the $200 million in bonding, we come out well ahead. 25 a year in income tax and other revenue, and we put in 10 for payment. That's a payoff. So the economics just aren't there, and it just doesn't come in that way.
We got to wrap up, but a tax bill finally passed out of the House, and it looks like it's headed for Vetoville over on the governor's desk. What are your reactions to that?
Well, I voted against it. I was intrigued to find that the GOP defines business in such a way that doesn't include agriculture. Agriculture saw huge property tax increases this last year. In my area alone, 30% increases in property taxes. But the only property tax that was addressed in this bill was what's called CI, commercial industrial. I think until there's a plan will cover the farmers as well as the other businesses, and also the homeowners and seniors.
Whoa, hang on a sec. Let's back up here. This whole, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing about corporate taxes. My property taxes went up like 28%. I'm getting killed, okay? I'm just an average Joe. Honest to God, you guys have to get together on this, because, we hear from our viewers that, why don't they talk about property tax on our level?
Well, we have, and there's a
Target doesn't need property tax relief
couple
right
things.
now,
Couple things
Senator
is that we are targeting two things. The commercial industrial property tax hits all business, from 3 people, 1 person, up to the largest company in the state. The CI, the business property tax, hits every business.
The small guy doesn't own that; he's leasing it.
You're assuming things. I know a lot of small business people that own the property. Even if they lease it, Marty, they're going to pay property tax to the leases. So if you reduce the property tax, and this property tax thing is just holding the inflator down. It's stopping the inflator. There's an automatic inflator in this every year. So even if a business, small to large, doesn't have any increase in their income because of the economy, their inflator still goes up. So it doesn't matter what their property value is. So we've limited
Are you looking
to
at
small
this as a
property.
job creator? Is that an engine?
If you put every dollar in the private sector that's not in the public sector generates more wealth, more jobs, absolutely. And so this CI, tax issue for the businesses, small to large, everyone freezing the inflator.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. We have targeted property tax relief in there. We have tax relief and incentives for veterans. We have capital investment stuff for companies under 80 employees that targets. It's a refund that they get up front instead of having to go through a long process and paperwork. So there's a lot of things in that bill, including TIF relief for communities all throughout the state. So there's a lot of stuff in that bill for smaller companies, smaller businesses, and it holds it flat. And we have targeted property tax relief for individuals who've had their property tax go up.
Well, Marty, you just heard it. Farmers aren't business. Farming's a $15 billion a year industry in our state. Their property taxes went up 18 to 30% because of votes that were taken last year. There's not a dime in this bill for farmers. Nothing for there's $4 million for homeowners. Excuse me on that. And
homeowners,
also, this is
$4 million.
Yes.
$4 million, and there's also a huge budget hole going forward. So it's sort of give us a tax break today for commercial industrial. We'll gladly pay you next Tuesday and next Tuesday and next Tuesday.
Well, you guys continue to call the elimination of LGA a tax increase. And I can see where you got that formula, but still that's the state paying out money to these local governments for things that subsidizing their existence, basically. What I think people get concerned about is when those dollars are still flowing in, we're still being taxed at that high rate up by the state. Where's that money being redirected or reallocated if it's not going to LGA?
There is, and we helped fix the LGA too because some of the formula things flopped around, so we had to fix stuff for communities under 5,000 and froze the number for others. But LGA is a big expense for this state, and we had to get it under control. We had an LGA commission with a lot of different people around the table. Everybody decides.
You guys call it municipal welfare.
I haven't. I don't know. Maybe somebody has, but I haven't. But it's a system that we all agreed sitting around the table. Yes, there's a problem with it because for the last 30 years they've been studying this thing and said, well, it comes down to need. So define need. So when you start trying to define need, everybody has a different idea. It's expensive. It has to be controlled. And Minneapolis is up here looking for another. More money for a stadium in downtown Minneapolis. They can't afford to hold up the Target Center. They have a sales tax, one of the highest food and beverage downtown tax in the country. And they say, well, they need more LGA to keep the cops on the road. Well, how about you focus that money on convention centers and fixing your roads and redirecting it to other things instead of building another stadium and trying to finance that and coming back to the legislature from LGA. So this is a
seems like
cyclical
a solid
process.
point, Representative Morrow.
I'm sorry, Senator Chamberlain is obviously not coming out to rural Minnesota where we really do have trouble with fire, police.
Sure.
EMTs.
But what about his point about Minneapolis? Why are we worried about stadiums? We can't fund them.
I'm worried about the entire state. We can put the stadium aside for a moment. Just talk about what's going on in the entire state. And when I talk to the folks out in my area, at least, their farmers are getting their huge property tax increase. The homeowners are. We're making cuts, trying to figure out how we handle police, how we handle fire, how we handle essential governmental services. These aren't extras. These aren't doodads. These are essential things we need. And the property tax base isn't there because we keep hitting it for schools, which we haven't repaid, but we're going to pay for a tax benefit for corporations before we pay back to schools now. This is not the way we should be handling the budget.
A couple of quick pieces. We had a bill on the governor's desk would have completely paid back the school shift from last year. He vetoed that. Property tax relief in the rural area. Green Acres was completely reformed last year and plugged a lot of holes for the farmers and rural people. Farmers are business. Former Speaker Svigum sitting over there, he's a businessman, he's a farmer. Therefore, property tax relief, they don't pay the inflator. And there is also special relief for rural property on ag land. I'm not an ag person, but I know we went through that ad nauseum in the committee, in the tax committee. We did a lot to address the rural issues, a lot to cut the taxes. He says, I want to give money to the wealthy guys. I think the governor and the DFL are willing to pick the pockets of average Minnesotans who pull tabs and bingo and transfer that wealth to Ziggy Wolf. So do not sit there and tell me that I'm in the pocket of business or I'm worried only about big business. Right now, I'm fighting the principled, straightforward fight for every individual, whether you're rich or poor, and my position has been consistent. The position of my caucus has been consistent. We want to control taxes and spending all across the board for every Minnesotan, not just for and not give it back to the wealthy when they come to town on a jet in a limousine. They hand them over the bag of money. I want a stadium deal. I want to get it done. But you talk about this duplicity and this hypocrisy. It's not from our caucus. I know that was a sharp hit.
No, if it were valid, I'd be concerned, but it's not, so I'm not worried.
All right.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight, gentlemen. I do appreciate you dropping by to talk about these issues. And I know jobs was going to be a focus. what I hear from my viewers is that it's unfortunate that it wasn't more of a focus for the legislature and the governor this year. But I guess there's no. What do you got? 5 days left. We wanted to wrap up Monday, and it didn't happen. What happened to that?
Well, you know, as it always is, as is always the case, as I've been told, that these things are sometimes fungible. It depends on what the governor wants and what the legislature's doing. So I would like to have been done in April, but things change.
Yeah. All right. Well,
thank you.
Thank you both for
thanks,
coming on.
Mark.
You bet. Representative Morrow, thank you, Senator Chamberlain.
Thank you,
Good to
Representative.
see you guys. All right, we'll be right back after these messages with reporter Paul Demko from Politics in Minnesota, and he'll give us his take on what the heck is going on up here at the legislature. Be right back.